All right, today's guests hail from the heart of Long Island, New York. Formed in 2021, St. Renascence quickly united over a shared love of legendary acts like Maiden, Priest, and Metallica. Their self-titled debut album, released in March of 2024, has already earned rave reviews for its aggressive yet melodic approach. Their latest single, Behind Closed Doors, is available and streaming now. Let's welcome Paul Manno and Vinny Cook from St. Renascence. Guys, how are you?
Good. What's going on? How are you?
Good, guys. Good. So let's talk a little bit about the latest track you guys got here, Behind Closed Doors. Really sounds aggressive. Some great licks and great vocals on here for sure. Vinny, what's your feedback on that? Let's start with you.
Well, I mean, this song is kind of more of a. I think Paul was pretty much kind of a little bit the mastermind of this song, lyrically, and he brought most of the riffs to me. So, I think he could, better explain it than I do.
Okay, sure, yeah, Paul. So your take?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the meaning of the song kind of derived from like domestic violence. Not to be super dark. It's more of like, people out there who need, a voice, so I was very influenced by a story of a girl named Gabby Petito, very famous all over Netflix and everything. And, as far as like the riffs and everything, a lot of the riffs that we do for this project and this band, I'll just write something on voice memo, send it over to Vinny, and, we'll just kind of work with it and see what kind of derives from it. But I think our whole approach for this new album, is we're kind of going a little more modern, rather than more or less in the 80s, kind of like our first record, which was more of like a statement that like, okay, we're here, we could play this 80s metal, but we could make it sound original. This album is more, and that track really kind of progresses more to the, let's take this 80s metal and kind of move it to what modern metal sounds like, but still have the 80s roots in it. You know what I mean? So as far as like the music writing and the composing, Vinny does a lot of, most of that really for this record is coming from the mastermind of Vinny. The first record was a little more classic oriented, which is kind of like what I guess I bring to the table. But yeah, I think it's a really great track, one of my favorites, and I think we have so much in store for the rest of the record. We're excited to share it later in the year.
Excellent. Yeah, I wanted to talk about actually the debut album a little bit here. So you kind of mentioned that a little bit. So some great tracks on here. Obviously, Kneel for the Saint, Through Pain and Fear. Great melodic metal melodies, I would say. Definitely for that, and definitely the 80s feel. And I was going to agree with you totally. This is a progression, definitely from that to this newer album. Vinny, did you want to speak to that? How this is progressed from that sound?
Well, yeah, I mean, like the way that I think of it is, your first album kind of, really showcases your influences, and you can easily hear in some of the tracks, like you may hear a little bit of Priest, you may hear a little bit of Maiden or Metallica, anything from that to like I don't know, I would say like Dokken or something, but I guess with this second record, I wanted to, because what's really cool about me and Paul is that we kind of have our different styles of I guess like music that we listen to. He's more of like the 80s type, like classic metal stuff, and I mean, which I definitely do love, which I grew up listening to as a kid, but as I like kind of like progressed further into my music, I like more like the the modernized stuff like that, like like Kill Switch and All That Remains, and a lot of the metalcore stuff that's out now. So I think with the new record, it's I've been trying to, we're really trying to like, take both styles and kind of like blend it, and I guess, I think it kind of shows off like more of like our sound, you know.
Yeah. I'm definitely digging that. I'm definitely digging, the vocal mixes on that sound really, really good. And I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the band. So let's talk about your vocalist, Chandler Mogul. Let's talk a little bit about him. Was he originally in the band from the get-go? And he definitely defines, your sound, definitely, his voice, right?
Yeah, I'll take it over. Yeah, I mean, it was, to be honest, me and Vinny kind of started this thing, and it was very hard to find a singer that really could, not just, sing and do his part, but kind of be, a cymbal and a front man. And, I think everything just checked the boxes. And, he's in a few other projects as well. Double Vision being, his main project. And, the ability to kind of, be able to perform with him and get him on these records. I think it's building a really good foundation for our sound. And, if we didn't grab the stereotypical Rob Halford or, Dio or Ozzy, the guy sings in a foreigner tribute band, which people would be like, what the heck is wrong with you? You know what I mean? So I just thought, he's got a very melodic edge to his voice. And I thought, I know Vinny loves the screamo metal. I'm not a fan of it, but I do love the heavy riffs, and I'll even love Slayer and some of that stuff. But like, I feel like this type of music needs melody. You need to remember what singers are singing. You need to remember what words they're singing, and not always just screaming. And I just feel like for our style, what we're doing, how we're progressing, yeah, he's been a great fit for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think vocals and words are so important in songs, and for someone like me, that's what sticks with me. That's what sticks out for all the great music that I grew up listening to. And I think his voice adds that extra, almost like album oriented rock sound. You know what I mean? It's like a duality between the heaviness and the album-oriented rock sound of his voice, which when I first listened to some of your tracks, I wasn't sure what to expect, when he came out here, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm really digging it. I think that was a great choice. So let's move on to the rhythm section here. You got Steve McQueen on drums, I think it is, and Johnny Goldblade on bass.
Yeah, no, we have Chris Perret on bass.
Okay.
Yeah, he was kind of a fill-in. Chris Perret is our bass player. We had him on the record, and he's played the last few shows with us. I'll start with Chris. He's also he's just a very, very talented bass player. Me and Vinny years ago, I was actually the drummer of the band, and Vinny was guitar and Chris was bass. So we always had like this trio, that we would play covers of Dio and all this stuff. And I ended up switching to guitar because I wanted to write and I wanted to do something, and it's kind of like full circle moment being able to, release music and do what we love together, and still try and chase our dreams. I know Chris is also in a few other projects that are really amazing. Bad Animals, they're a cover band, and Emerald Rising is an amazing original band from the island as well. So another guy with a great resume, and yeah, he's a building block of this project and the record and this band. So yeah, he's amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, so I wanted to actually touch on that too. You mentioned building block. I wanted to kind of go back a little bit in time when you guys kind of start first putting this project together. I think you were saying it was you and Vinny. Vinny, can you tell us a little bit about how it kind of started out for you guys?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I was probably finishing up my last semester of college, at the time, and this was during COVID, and I think Paul sort of came out to me with because like years before, me and Paul and Chris originally got together as a trio, and Paul was actually drumming at the time, and we wanted to we definitely played a couple gigs as a band. We haven't really started writing stuff at that time yet, and then then we kind of separated. We all went to college and did the adult thing.
Right.
And then after COVID, Paul called me up just to I guess we were just talking, and he showed me a lot of the riffs that he was writing on guitar, because not only he's a good drummer, he was also a really good guitar player. So I was listening to all of it, and I literally just got my studio up and going at the time. I think this was like around like 2019, so or maybe 2020, maybe like around there.
So it was really perfect timing, it kind of sounds like, really, for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, hey, why don't you come over here, and I'll record all the stuff, and we can start writing, and that's basically how it started.
Yeah. I think that's another super important thing you're talking about, riffs. That's another key element, obviously, to any great song. You know what I mean? You get that killer riff and those great words and vocals together, and that's what makes a great song, for sure. So another thing I want to ask you both about here is the topic that's on so many musicians' mind nowadays is the rise of AI, and it's kind of unrestricted use in music and art. There's really not a lot of controls around this, and there's some crazy stuff going on all the time, it seems, for professional artists, all kinds of people. I've seen things happen very, very strange. So let's go back to you, Paul, and give me your take, and then we'll talk to you, Vinny, about it. What's your take on what's going on with AI, and where do you think it's headed?
As crazy as it sounds, like, I don't even think about AI with music as much, because we don't use it with our band. You know what I mean? I think it's definitely got cool aspects to it, and is it something that I'll ever rule out? Absolutely not. I mean, the last cover art we had was AI, because it's pretty expensive to get a digital artist to really make you cover art after cover art plus your album art. So was it a little bit of cutting a corner? Absolutely. But yeah, we used a little AI there. But as far as like the actual music itself, it's definitely more digitalized now. Very electronic sounding, and not as like raw and live sounding. So yeah, as far as like AI goes, it's not something we really use. So
Not something you really think about. Yeah.
It's not something, and I'm probably answering for Vinny as well, because you know what I mean. Like, it's what we do. I basically just do it the old-fashioned way. I'll send a voice memo over to Vinny. He'll either say, "Yeah, that's a cool riff. Let's work with it," or he'll say, "Yeah, absolutely not." You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I've probably gotten absolutely not more than, "Yeah, let's work with it." It's hard. It's really hard to write, and Vinny's he's a mastermind. He really is. So him with writing compared to me it comes a lot easier to him. It's in his blood. It's in his family. It is for mine too. But he's his dad played with Dio, but
really.
Yeah, so
well, we got to talk about that now. You can't just throw that out there.
I hate that I had to throw that in there. Vinny's probably pissed at me for it, but it's something I had to definitely. I had to chime it in there because.
So give us a scoop. He threw it out there, man. You got to give us a little bit about that, Vinny.
Well, Well, to first, I mean, like, yeah, I'll definitely get to that. To first piggyback off of Paul of what he was saying about, you know, all the AI stuff. I mean, like, yeah, but I mean, like, we don't. I mean,
I mean, it's just crazy now, right? You can download an app. You can say, like, you can put like a sentence in there or something, right? It'll write a whole song for you with just one little idea. Crazy, right?
I guess it could definitely help, like, you know, lyrically and stuff like that. You know, I mean, I know that I've written my handful of lyrics, you know, when it comes to, you know, all these songs, but I mean, but you know, I guess in terms of like you know, recording and engineering, I mean, like, you know, I've been having a lot of fun with the you know, with some of the drumming software that I have, you know, which basically helps us, me and Paul, you know, which helps me and Paul like write most of the stuff.
Right. And that was very controversial in the day when drum machines and stuff like that were coming out, right? Or synthesizers, that all that stuff was super controversial.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's just a lot of the equipment that, you know, a lot of the recording equipment that's coming out nowadays, it's like, it's you know, it's evolving, you know, so much to the point where it's just like, you know, you don't really even need a full band with you, you know? I mean,
right.
Like, you know, you don't really need, you know, all the fancy, you know, mixing boards that you used to see, like, you know, on...
Right. Those like big, huge ones, yeah, that I always wanted when I was younger, yeah.
Yeah, like, the you know, the huge mixing boards will go from one end of the room all the way to the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you don't really see that anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, my dad was a very, you know, was a really big influence on me, you know, when I was a kid. You know, he taught me how to play my, you know, my first instrument, and which was mainly guitar, you know. And my dad, you know, I sort of like inherited this little, I mean, because my dad plays by ear, you know, and I play by ear. You know, my dad's played with some really great bands in the past. He's played with, you know, he played with Ronnie James Dio. He was on the Lock Up the Wolves album in 1990. He played bass on that record. And he also played with Great White, you know, playing bass. And, you know, he, you know, I guess with also, you know, I mean, it doesn't all come from my dad. It also comes from my mother, you know, too. You know, my mother is probably, you know, I mean, I think probably, you know, one of the best vocalists that I've ever heard, you know.
Right.
But
I could sorry to interrupt. I could vouch for that. She's I don't know if I could curse on here, but she's a badass. She's
we can curse on here. This is the internet. We can say whatever we want.
Yeah, she is unbelievable. As far as vocals, especially for a female. I mean, yeah. So not to go on and on, but yeah. His family is so talented.
Well, you're definitely growing up around a lot of music.
Mine is too, you know. But Dina, oh, sorry to say a name. You know, Vinny's mom and, you know, his dad are just phenomenal musicians, and so is he. So as far as like the music goes and everything, sorry if my dogs are barking in the background. Yeah, I think we both get our roots from our family, and we're just kind of carrying the torch, you know. I think that's really what it comes down to, and it really shows in our writing and our playing.
Yeah, I would agree with you, definitely. I think that's a huge influence when you're younger. If you have siblings or your family, you know, what they're listening to, what they're doing, you know, if they're musicians, that's going to hugely influence you for sure. But very, very cool stuff. That's amazing, definitely. So let's go back to you for a second here, Paul. Obviously, some big news lately in the world of rock. Every year is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announcements. And every year, us metal guys are wondering when certain bands are going to get in. Well, finally, we've got a second band. We rallied for years to get Judas Priest in there. We finally got them in there, at least in some way, shape, or form. And now it looks like Iron Maiden is going to be in this year. Are you excited about that? You got any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's long overdue, you know.
Right?
I mean, when you think about a band, it's, you know, from a business aspect, you're building a brand, you're building, you know, a following, and, you know, they're an icon of metal. I mean, you ask any person who likes 80s music or 80s rock or metal, like, that's probably in their top five bands, you know. They just, when you I guess, you know, create a band or you hear someone, you got to create a unique sound. So you could play 5 seconds of Iron Maiden and you know it's Iron Maiden.
You know
You could
exactly.
play
Yep.
5 seconds of Judas Priest, you know it's Judas Priest. You
Yeah.
could play 5 seconds of AC/DC, you know it's AC/DC. The list goes on, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I'm excited. I just think it's long overdue, honestly.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely, for sure. And I totally agree with you. The sound of those bands, and I think the thing that's always stands out in my mind is the following and the loyalty of the fans of Iron Maiden. They didn't need to be doing all these highfalutin different things or different movies or different advertising. You know what I mean? They have
yeah.
such a loyal fan base. I think that goes for metal in general, really. But Iron Maiden, definitely one of the most loyal fan bases I've ever seen through thick and thin. People stand with them.
And honestly, I mean, maybe it's an underrated thought, but I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of the bands from back in the day, you know, they're losing a lot of members. You know, some of them are dead, unfortunately. Rest in peace. But like, I mean, I know Nico McBrain isn't with them anymore, but I mean, that's a band that just kind of always stayed together. So credit to them. You know, they've just, I don't know, they're just a glue. I guess they've always stuck together. A lot of bands broke apart and, you know, had a lot of differences and changed their ways, but I feel like they, you know, that's what makes them so amazing is they kind of just stuck to their craft and stuck through it all, you know.
Yep, yep. Like you said, they had that certain sound. You know, it was made it, and so yeah, all of us fans are happy to get one more metal band in what they call the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
Absolutely.
anyway, so let's switch gears a little bit here, Vinny, and talk about gear. So I always like to ask musicians and guitar players, especially, you know, if they have certain gear they like or effects, or they change it up, or some people they haven't figured out. They like what they like. You know, they're not chasing a tone or a special thing. Give us a little background on what you have or what you like, Vin.
Wow. I mean, like, the list kind of goes on.
All right, well, give us an abridged version. You know, maybe a couple different guitars or effects, or do you have certain amps you like? I know some people are very tried and true. They'll stick with a Marshall, or maybe they're going with the EVHs. You know, things like that. Mesa Boogie was real big back in the day for a while too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I was a big Mesa Boogie fan when I was, back in high school. I was trying to chase that Metallica tone.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I guess, throughout the years of my guitar playing and, the gear that I've always been through. I've been through a ton of, I went through a couple of 5150 amps. I do have a what's it called? The Carvin Legacy from Steve Vai.
Okay.
I've played with that a lot. But I think what I find to be difficult about a lot of these amps is that they sound amazing. The tone and the warmth, like you literally get all of that with all of these amps, but so as I guess my gigging and as I kind of like progressed throughout the years, I started to get a little bit conservative. Like I started using a lot of digital amps. I recently started I started using Boss a couple of years ago, but now I think my main rig that I use right now is Fractal Audio's XFX3, which has basically been like, you know, my lifesaver to everything. You know, I don't have to worry about, like, you know, carrying a whole bunch of pedals with me or cables or anything like that. You know, I mean, like, it's basically like 1,000,000 amps in a box,
Right.
you know, and I get whatever kind of sound that I want. I do, I guess, like, my favorite sound, you know, I guess probably would stem from, you know, I guess Eddie Van Halen's sound. You know, I grew up listening to Van Halen. You know, I have, like, Eddie was probably like my number one.
Right. And he always said he never had any effects. Right?
Oh yeah.
I don't know what he did inside of his guitar, but he said, I just have my guitar and my amp. I mean, I'm sure there was something going on in there, but he never would say, he's like, oh, I don't have any effects, you know?
Yeah.
Don't need them.
I mean, like, really want to, yeah, I mean, like, you really want to talk about a true innovator. I mean, like, he's probably one of the best. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, like, he's probably the best to ever do it. You know, and, like, I think he had such a unique sound, and, you know, and even all the bands that I listen to, you know, like all the newer bands out there, like Lamb of God, and, you know, like, I sort of, you know, glide towards the more heavier aspect, you know, of, you know, all the metal stuff. But all of those guys are using 5150s.
Yeah.
You know, they're all using PV, you know. So, I mean, like, it's just, I really like, you know, the kind of attack, and just, you know, I just love the sound of it. I haven't really used anything else in a while. So, but I mean, but yeah, I mean, the Axe Effects, I use it for recording. I use it for live shows. You know, it's basically, you know, I mean, it's one hell of an investment. You know, I mean, my entire rig probably cost me around like $5,000, but, you know, it's I basically use it for everything. You know, for metal, for rock, for, you know, you can, like, classic rock, you know, jazz, blues. You know, it's a whole, you know, the amount of sounds that you can get out of that thing is just is incredible. You know, so
Yeah.
and then, you know, the first, you know, I used it, you know, on the first Saint Renascence record, and, you know, I'm also currently using it on the album that we're working on right now.
All right, very, very cool. All right, so Paul, back to you. What do we got going forward here? What's next up for Saint Renaissance, and what dates you guys got coming up?
What's next? Honestly, I would say right now the focus is the record. You know, we kind of want to be a little more strategic with planning our shows, and I think, you know, it's been a little hard to book shows, because we don't want to establish ourselves as, you know, a bar metal band. So, you know, we played our debut show at the Suffolk Theater, which, as an original band, is like unheard of. That's like literally never happens. We opened up for a band called Spread Eagle. They were, you know, they had a few
Oh
hits.
yeah,
in
yeah. I had Ray West on the show here a couple months ago from Spread Eagle. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, really cool guys.
Yeah.
You know, really cool band. You know, it was an amazing opportunity, and you know, it was, you know, those are the types of shows we're looking for, to play with established musicians and be on, and, you know, be the opening band for a band that, you know, has a following, and not just, you know, a bar band. You know, I think we've kind of, not as this group, but I mean, me and Vinny have kind of been there, done that type of thing. It's not really in our best interest, you know, not to be like cocky about it, but, you know, to really grow this thing, because obviously we're still building, and you're always going to build your brand and, you know, the band itself. But, you know, I guess going forward right now, the shows are definitely going to be very, very limited. But with that being said, once we get this second album, you know, done, which we're hoping late winter of this coming year, 2026, we're hoping that, you know, we get a lot more streams, a lot more, popularity. We actually got Tony Newton. He's the bass player of KK's Priest, and he's mixing this next record. And he's worked with Iron Maiden as well at mixing one of their albums. So, as you could hear in the audio and everything, we're obviously getting more of a fatter, heavier metal sound, and the direction of the band. Not to ramble on, but yeah, I mean, as far as what's in store, we're in my eyes, we're about to release one of the best metal albums that you'll ever hear. Like, that's how I look at it. We're not here to play around. We're here to make a statement. I think our first album was kind of a statement that, like, here, we could do the 80s metal and bring it back. But this album is really going to show people what our identity is. Like, who are these guys? So, not to, like I said, I'm not a cocky person. Me and Vinny are pretty, what's the word? I guess, like, I forget the word. more like humble. We're more
Gotcha.
humble. We're more humble musicians, but we're also confident.
Right. You guys got a plan, and you're going to execute.
Exactly. So it's a lot of work. We have a lot of work ahead. I can tell you right now, from what we've put in the studio and the music we're working on and what's in progress right now, it's going to blow people's minds. It's just about getting it out there, which is really tough, but without a record label, we did over 100,000 streams in over 100 countries. So pretty amazing milestone for that record. We've been independent still, and, we're just going to keep grinding, and yeah, that's about it.
Excellent. Well, I really like what you guys are doing so far. So out right now, folks out there, you can stream behind closed doors right now, available from St. Renaissance. Very, very cool. And we look forward to new tracks and the new album coming out, guys. Definitely. We look forward to all that from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate it.
Yep, you got it. And if you folks out there want to know more about St. Renaissance, you can check them out at strenaissance.com. All right, so that wraps up this episode of Talking About Rock. Thank you to my guests today, Paul Manno and Vinny Cook from St. Renaissance. And to the folks out there, we hope you're doing your part by keeping the torch alive and supporting live music wherever you are.